Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Today we have Erin McFadden, who is a polar diver, and she's going to get started right away because we're a little bit behind due to some technical difficulties on my end. So without further ado, I'll let Erin get started.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, Erin.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to speak to you all because I'm actually very far away. I'm over in Scotland at the moment, and I believe you're all in North America. Is that right?
That's correct.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Well, I'm just wanting to share a few of my insights from my career so far. I'm only 28 still, so I'm still figuring out a lot for myself. But when I was about 12 years old, I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist, but I also knew if I wanted to be a marine biologist, I would have to learn to dive. So before I even went to university to start studying, I got my professional dive qualifications. And as a result of that, I've been able to travel the world as a diver. But now I'm actually back at university. I believe in North America, you also call university school. So I'm back doing a postgraduate degree in marine science. And I'm doing that here in Scotland. So although I've been around the world doing weird and wonderful things in all manner of countries and all temperatures of water, now I'm back home and I'm studying because there is a lot to be gained from going to university and studying hard, believe me. So I'll just get started with, I've put together a few slides of some of the things I've seen and done. Well, a few of the highlights of the things I've seen and done. So at the moment I'm way up in Scotland, where that the first red arrow at the top kind of points to. So I'm way up there, but every year apart from this year, I've been traveling down to Antarctica. And my job in Antarctica is to go diving, and the water temperature is freezing. It's below freezing actually, because seawater freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water. So that would be the ice cubes in your freezers at home. I've been going down there to film and photograph weird and wonderful creatures that you find down there in order to show them to people that are on the ships I'm traveling on. So one of the most amazing things we can see as divers, and one of the things we don't actually get to see very often when we're diving, are icebergs. So hopefully this, if you can still hear me, this should give you an insight. I'll try and just mute the sound there. So this is us in an area called the Antarctic Peninsula. So it's one of the northernmost parts of Antarctica, but even though it's one of the warmer places of Antarctica, you can see there's still an awful lot of ice around. And on this day, we pulled up into this gorgeous bay, and as the dive team, my colleague and I looked at this iceberg, which is all made of freshwater ice. And we thought, do you know what? That looks like an iceberg that would be perfect to try and look at underwater. So we took our boats, we call the boats Zodiacs, they're smaller boats. We took those off to have a look at this iceberg because this iceberg wouldn't have been attached to the bottom. It would have been once part of a big glacier that was attached to the land, and it would have broken off in a big event that we call calving. And when it broke off, it's been melting and it's been moving and bobbing around in this freezing water, just melting very slowly. And sometimes they can just break apart and break up. But this one, we chose to dive because it was really, really stable looking. So as we roll back into the water, we work in degrees Celsius in the UK. So the water temperature there would have been about -1. I'm not sure in the US that's maybe 38 and below, I think. But underwater in Antarctica, this is what we were seeing, just this huge big ball of ice essentially. And you see all those dimples along the iceberg. That's actually caused when the water flows past the iceberg. And the water catches in little currents and circulations, and it basically melts and erodes into the side of the ice. So as you can see, it goes really, really, really far down. As divers, we can't go that far down. We are restricted to the first 90 feet, but 90 feet is still quite deep. I'm sure you'd agree. It's a good few laps of your swimming pool before you've covered 90 feet, at least one and a bit. So those are those big dimples along the side there that I was telling you about. And this is my dive buddy, Caitlin. We have to both be really experienced divers to dive about this iceberg because it is still moving, remember, it's not attached to anything. And where's all the life? Well, does anyone know what this is? I'm not sure if you will. It looks a bit like a prawn or a shrimp. And essentially it is a shrimp-like animal, but it's something we call Antarctic krill. And there's millions of billions of these animals in Antarctica. And if you were to go to Antarctica and if you were to see a penguin or a whale or any animal, almost any other animal you would find in Antarctica, it will be eating this Antarctic krill. If you can look closely here, you might see some bubbles inside of the ice, and you might see some bubbles bubbling out of the ice. This is because the ice was once snow. Before it became this big glacier, this big chunk of ice on land, it was snow. So snow was piling and piling and piling and piling up, and it was getting squished and squeezed down to become essentially ice. But the air that was in between all these pieces of snowflakes, not all of that air was squished out as the ice was forming. So what you're seeing here are air bubbles that are hundreds and hundreds of years old. And as this iceberg is melting, all of these air bubbles are coming out. So what you're looking at there is actually just my dive computer, and I was showing you it because it said 0 degrees in the bottom left corner. That's essentially freezing point of fresh water. It's why this freshwater iceberg is still frozen, but the seawater that we're diving in isn't, because of the salt water contained in the seawater itself. That's why the freezing point is lower. So this is just a shot looking right up to the surface of the iceberg there. And my dive buddy, Caitlin, can you see how much thermal protection or how much stuff we have to wear just to keep us warm? Even though we've got all of that protective gear on, we still get cold. We still get very cold. So here's this little animal again, that Antarctic krill. Now sometimes I slow down the footage I capture, and you can see its big black eye at the top there, and if you look really closely, you can see there's some green in its belly or its gut. And that green stain actually comes from the plants it's eating, and it eats what we call phytoplankton. Phytoplankton are essentially plants that live in the sea, but they're tiny. So what this animal does as it swims along is it's scooping and filtering out all of the phytoplankton it can find. The water, as you can see here, is actually very clear. So the krill won't be feeding on so much in this area, but sometimes when we go diving, we can hardly see anything. And the reason that is because the water column is just so full of these marine plants. So it affects how far we can see. But for something like a krill, those are the conditions it wants, so that it can start trying to basically get really fat on all of that. Now look how small it is. And you see it gets bumped by one of my buddy's bubbles here. It takes a big hit off to the side. So you could say they are quite delicate animals, but in many ways there is safety in numbers, because these animals swarm, or what we call a shoal or a school of krill, in their millions. And unfortunately now, they are actually being fished. Sometimes when we're in Antarctica, we see these big krill fishing boats. But crazily enough, what they're using the krill for is only a little bit of food for us as humans. Most of the krill that's caught in Antarctica actually feeds other fish species. So for example, if you maybe know what a farmed salmon is, if you maybe eat salmon at home, then the likelihood is that this, or a krill similar to this, has been captured in Antarctica and it's been taken and processed into fish food. So the krill from Antarctica are feeding your fish in North America and over here where I am in Europe. So it was really actually very special for us as divers to, number one, find an iceberg that was safe enough for us to dive on and with nice clear water like this, but also to find an Antarctic krill that was willing to kind of play for our camera so that we could essentially show you what one looks like, because it's rare for us as divers to find an Antarctic krill and be able to film it. The big swarms of them are usually concentrated a little further than we're able to go and dive in, and also concentrated in the areas that we can't see anything anyway, because remember, they're filtering out all of that food, all of that marine food. So that was us surfacing from our dive. It was a hard dive because it's hard to dive around something that's bobbing up and down beside you in terms of what you can see, and keeping your mind sane and safe to think, am I moving or is the iceberg moving? You really needed to know what you were doing, but as you can see from Caitlin's face, we thoroughly enjoyed it. And then, so that's just a still shot, sorry, of that Antarctic krill that we saw on that dive. But if you imagine that's maybe only 2 or 3 inches long, sometimes when we're diving in Antarctica, we get an even more exciting experience, and that actually comes from something that we call a leopard seal. Now, if you have any idea of how big these can get, I would guarantee probably if 2 children in the class lay down head to foot in front of one another, you probably wouldn't be as long as this animal. But the thing with these animals is if we know they're around, we don't always get in the water with them. But this one day at HO Island, we went for one of our usual dives not so long ago, maybe just a year ago, this time of year last year. We hadn't seen the leopard seal before we got in. There was 3 of us on this dive, the same dive buddy you saw in the previous dive. But when we went under, and when we were just trying to find footage of some other interesting life to film, maybe things like sea stars or sea snails, when we got under, we actually found that there was a leopard seal. Now, this was probably a female leopard seal, and although they're huge and they look very scary, they mainly eat krill. So if you think of that tiny little animal that I showed you before, this huge animal, which is hundreds of kilograms. In terms of pounds, it's probably, I think, 300 to 400 pounds, maybe even 500 pounds for the biggest ones. And they get to a good 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters long. That's 12 feet. I'm sorry, in Europe we work in meters, but I know you're working in feet. And you can see how amazingly graceful this animal is, and you can see how big it is compared to us. We usually only see one on its own. Sometimes when it's time for all the penguin chicks to take to the water, when the penguin chicks are old enough to go into the water by themselves, then sometimes you find leopard seals, or you find more than one leopard seal in one place, because sometimes leopard seals will eat penguins. But you can see how powerful those foreflippers are. And unlike a lot of seals you see in Antarctica, the head and the jaw of a leopard seal is huge. A lot of seals just have a tiny wee head and a really fat body. But the leopard seal is very muscular. It's very strong because, as I said, it does hunt things such as penguins, and it will take small seals too, because remember, a leopard seal will have to have young leopard seals of its own. They need to stay strong, they need to stay fit and healthy in order to do so. So although this animal is huge and it can look quite scary, I just think they're really, really, really graceful. And I've had maybe 10 encounters with leopard seals, and they've all been pretty special. Some certainly more memorable than others. So I would say that although when we go diving in Antarctica, it can be freezing, but my buddy and I, Caitlin, we know how to make it fun. And when you're wrapped up in a big dry suit and you've got big gloves on, there's nothing to ever stop you from jumping off an iceberg and into the water. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into diving in Antarctica, and I would very happily take any questions.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Erin. So guys, I want to tell you a little bit more about Erin too, because we didn't get to do our introduction. So she was raised in Scotland, and when she was 17, she left, like she said, to go pursue her interests in marine biology. And she worked in the Bahamas for 5 months. And so she cemented her passion for these interests, and in the next few years worked in Cyprus and Zanzibar, as well as completing projects in South Africa. And when she graduated in 2011, she was awarded the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society's Rolex Scholarship for Europe, which is a very prestigious scholarship that let her travel from the Canadian Arctic to New Zealand and many places in between. So if you guys have some great questions, which I'm sure you do, I see some excited students, we'll let you get started. Can we start with Miss Adams' class?
Yes, we had a question. How heavy is the diving equipment that you have to wear?
The diving equipment that I wear is probably, it's not quite as heavy as me, but it's probably at least half the weight of an average adult. So in terms of, or a female, in terms of kilograms, it's at least 30, 40 kilograms, which I think is like 80 or 90 pounds. Sometimes when I go to stand up with all the gear on, you kind of go and you have to sit back down again and take another stand.
That'd be pretty heavy, hey guys?
Yes.
Awesome question, thank you. Miss Martin's class, do you guys have a question?
Hi.
Hi, we have a question. We're trying to decide which one here. Yes, go over there behind Scuba.
Have you ever encountered a penguin?
Have I ever encountered a penguin? Oh, yes. If you mean encountered a penguin underwater, that's actually quite rare as well, because penguins are actually quite shy. Probably because if you think about a penguin being hunted by that huge leopard seal I showed you, anything that's quite big, they're not going to want to come too close to. But on land in Antarctica, on the icy bits of land around the islands and on many of the icebergs, we see hundreds of thousands of penguins, and they're just as funny and cute and incredible as you would think they are.
That's awesome, great question, guys. So that's our grade 5 classroom in Park River. Which state are you guys in Park River?
North Dakota!
Awesome. And Miss Adams' class is in Virginia. So we'll come back to Miss Adams' class in a bit for some other questions. But now we have Miss Young's grade 5, 6, 7, and 8s in Manitoba in Canada. That's where I am. So Miss Young, does your class have a question?
Yes. Have you, what happens if you run out of air in your tank?
Oh, what happens if we run out of air in our tank? Well, to begin with, if you ever train to be a scuba diver, you're trained to never, ever, ever let yourself run out of air, because attached to the tank is actually a gauge, a little window that's attached to a hose that shows you exactly how much air you have. So as long as you're mindful and you look at that and you are aware of how much air you usually use, you shouldn't ever run out. However, should something happen, should an emergency happen, it's exactly why I dive with my dive buddy Caitlin, because she would be there to help me, and if she had a problem, I would be there to help her. And both of us carry 2 hoses, so I could still breathe from my tank whilst sharing it with my dive buddy Caitlin. Yeah, good question.
Really good question, guys. And Erin, how do you figure out how much air that you'll need for a specific dive?
To figure out how much air we need, it depends on a lot actually. It depends on how deep we're going. If you're diving deeper, you actually use up your air faster. But also if you're, say, a big, tall, strapping man, he would use more air because he's got bigger lungs to fill. Whereas Caitlin and I are quite small females, so we know we don't use a lot of air. But if I was going diving with some of my dive buddies who are much bigger, they use their air much faster. And through the process of experience, you gauge within yourself really how much air you will probably use and how much you will need. So I would say an average dive in Antarctica is anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. And at the end of that time, we've still got more than the required amount to safely get us to the surface.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Miss Young's class. Next up, we have Miss Meinecke's grade 3s in San Antonio, Texas.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello, my name is Kenzie.
Hi, Kenzie.
I have a question for you. What is the most interesting animal that you saw underwater?
Oh, there's so many. In terms of the one that is most interesting or gets me the most excited, it has to be the leopard seal because it's so big and you're just out there right in front of it. But some of my past experiences, I have been in a cage with the great white sharks. So they are very interesting because they are ginormous and they are quite scary. I would never ever get out of a cage with one of those. But you know, one of the other very interesting animals to see underwater is the octopus, because the octopus can change colour very, very quickly. So there's 3 for you: a shark, a seal, and an octopus.
Okay, I have another question. With special equipment, can deep sea divers go to the midnight zone?
Can deep sea divers go to the midnight zone? So the midnight zone, as in you're talking about the area where the sunlight kind of stops and we can't see. Well, usually that's on average beyond 300 feet in the ocean column. It depends where you are in the world. Sometimes the midnight zone can be deeper. So most divers, such as myself, I'm not trained to go beyond 40 meters or 120 feet. However, some divers that we call technical divers can dive to 100 meters and even more. But when you see all the equipment I was wearing, if you imagine more and more and more and more equipment, that's what you would need to go to those depths. It's extreme diving. Good question. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, we'll come back Miss Meinecke's class in a few minutes. Right now we have Mr. Vasquez's class.
Say hello.
They are from Oakville, Ontario. We have some grade 5s joining us. Hey, guys.
Yoda!
Hi.
Hi. Hi, my name is Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
I have a question for you. What is your favorite discovery?
Oh, my favorite discovery. Well, do you know, my last contract, I was working in Iceland, and it's not that I discovered it myself, but my colleague and I were looking at the charts or the maps of the harbour, and we saw there was a wreck
Waving
on the map, but nobody had told us about it. Nobody had dived it before, apart from one person that we could speak to. So we went diving on this wreck that was maybe at 60 or 70 feet. It was very dark. We needed our lights to see where we were going. But in this wreck, which was probably from the early 1900s, it had been a big wooden fishing vessel. We went diving on that, and inside of wrecks, there's a lot of fish life. They become reefs, they become homes for other fish species and things like sea stars, sea slugs, sea fans, sea sponges. So that was an incredible discovery, and that was only in the last few months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Awesome. All right, let's do another lap around to the other questions, as long as you have some time, Erin.
Mm.
Okay.
All
All right, Miss Martin's class in North Dakota, right?
Yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
I some questions.
Hello again.
Okay, we're coming.
Hi.
How heavy is a leopard seal?
How heavy is a leopard seal? They can be very, very, very heavy. So some of the smaller ones, you're talking 300 pounds, maybe. And some of the bigger ones, you're talking 400 pounds and up. So that would be a good few of you in the classroom. It would be a lot more than one of you, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of you and more. Yeah. Sorry, my home telephone's going, but I don't need to answer it. There's someone else in the house.
All right. So you guys, you heard a phone ringing in Scotland.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, let's try Miss Young's class. Back to Manitoba.
Hi, I'm Naya.
Hi, Naya.
How cold is the water in Antarctica?
Oh, yeah, it's very cold. If you imagine freezing point, so if you were to put some fresh water into an ice cube tray and you're to put it in your freezer and it froze, it's colder than that. It's minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, which in Fahrenheit, maybe that can be your homework to convert minus 1.8 degrees Celsius into Fahrenheit. But it's so cold that my fingertips and my toes and my lips, yeah, they're hurt the most. If you think it's a really cold, snowy day outside and your fingers start to tingle, it's like that, but even more, so even stronger. Yeah.
All right, good question, guys. And Miss Meineke's class.
Yes, we're here. We're so excited.
Hi.
Hi. Is everybody wave at her?
Hi, Miss McFadden. Hi, Miss McFadden. My name is Marley. What do
Hi,
you
Marley.
specialize in?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What do you specialize in?
What do I specialise in? Yeah, well, another very good question. So now I'm back at university or school, as I think you call it in America, and I'm specialising in marine science in Scotland and fisheries science combined with policy making, which sounds very boring, but it's very important because policy making is essentially, it's the level where all the decisions are made. So fisheries, for example, you can't just go and take all the fish you want out of the ocean. There's a certain amount you can take, and policies are what tell us how much fish we're allowed to take, for example. So I'm studying all of that at the moment, but always hope to get back to Antarctica.
Awesome.
Hi.
Thank you. We have one more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Adelina.
Hi, Adelina.
Have you ever discovered a new animal?
Oh, no, but I would love to. In fact, I'm trying to think if I even know anyone that has discovered a new animal. It's quite rare to discover a new animal, but I do believe one of my friends once discovered that a bird in South America that he was studying, there was another version of it, essentially another species of it. They just look very similar. But I do know that if you discover a new species, a new animal, then you're not really supposed to name it after yourself, but you can name it after your friend. So if I ever do discover a new species, maybe I can name it after my dive buddy.
Thank you. And one last short question we have.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ember.
Hi, Amber.
I was wondering, what is the biggest or tallest animal you've seen?
The biggest animal I've seen, it's probably the whale shark. So I don't know if you've seen photos or videos of the whale sharks. They live in tropical waters, warm waters. So you find them around Mexico, you find them, say, in Thailand or Indonesia. And I think they are the biggest fish, essentially, in the ocean. So they're huge, but they're very safe to be around because all they eat, much like the krill you saw in that video, they just eat the tiny plant life. They don't have big teeth. They just filter everything from the water. And in terms of how long they are, well, I would guess at least 16 feet and way more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Mr. Vasquez's class, do you have more questions?
Hi, my name is Vanessa, and I have a question for you.
Hi, Vanessa.
How long do you usually stay in the water for?
Well, how long do I stay in the water? If I'm somewhere nice and warm and tropical, an hour is fine. But in Antarctica, after 30 minutes, it's starting to get really cold. So at 40 minutes to 45 minutes, we have to come out. In fact, our boss tells us 45 minutes is all we're allowed in Antarctica. But that's because it's so cold, so we have to be safe. I've done dives that are well more than 1 hour, but we have to be quite shallow and it's always been nice and warm.
Thank
Good
Thank
question.
you.
You're
Good
welcome.
question.
Harry, you gonna ask a question? Harrison, come on, get over here, quick. Give the microphone to Harry.
Let's go.
That's a cool classroom you guys got there.
Yeah.
On the desk.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Harrison.
Hi, Harrison.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
What do you have to do when you see something rare?
What do I have to do when I see something rare? Well, it depends where we are and how rare it is. Say I was diving in Antarctica and I saw something that I had never seen before. Sometimes we don't even know what the name of it is. So what I would do is I would bring the images and the videos up to the surface and I would talk to my colleagues about it because some of them are also experienced divers. And if none of them knew what it was, then you can start getting in touch with organisations like the British Antarctic Survey, who are the British, or the Great British base in Antarctica for a lot of things such as scientific research. And I know America has their own Antarctic division, as is Australia, and that's where the real scientific experts are working. So if I found something and nobody could tell me what it was, and it might be a new species, then it's those people I would be getting in touch with.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very cool, guys.
Yoda!
Awesome. All right, well, if you have just a few more minutes, Erin, we can do one more round of questions, one final round. Okay, Ms. Martin's class, do you guys have one final question?
No, it's got one. No, it's got one. It's questions. Have you ever seen a whale diving?
Have I ever seen a whale? Yes, actually, the most scared, or the most scared I've ever been is when I saw a killer whale underwater. Now, killer whales, or what you might know as orca, are very, very intelligent animals. So this killer whale came round to have a look at me, it looked away, it came round to have a look at me again, and it looked away, and it came round again, and then it came round again, every time getting closer and closer until I said, I'm done, I'm getting out. I do not want to be in the water with this animal, because I doubt that it would ever try and hurt you. But just remember, these animals underwater, the whales, the sharks, the seals, they don't have hands. Think of everything you feel and you touch to discover what it is, or you sense so much via your hands. They don't have that. So what they do is they sense a lot via their mouths. So I didn't want to be in that situation. So that's probably, yeah, the scary encounter with the whale. But I've also very fleetingly, very quickly, in the distance, seen humpback whales too. Yeah, so there's always a chance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Martin's class. Okay, Miss Young's class.
Hi, my name is Gavin.
Hi, Gavin.
And I'd like to ask a question on what is the most dangerous situation you've ever been in?
Oh, the most dangerous. Well, I think sometimes you don't realise it was dangerous till after the event. But because when I'm in Antarctica, I'm at work, and much like when you're at school, your teacher won't let you do anything dangerous. My boss won't let me do anything dangerous if we know there's danger. But remember, when you're working out in a wild place, in a wild environment, things change quickly and things change fast. So although I've not been in many situations which are dangerous, I could say the things that I would tell you to avoid being in a dangerous situation would be if there was lots of ice all over the water surface. We wouldn't get in the water because there's a chance that ice could come on top of us and we wouldn't be able to get back through it. So we avoid that. If there was a leopard seal that we'd seen on the surface, and if there was more than one, and if they were approaching the boat we were working from and acting quite aggressive and angry, we wouldn't get in the water in that circumstance either. But I would say sometimes when you're diving with other less experienced people, if I've been guiding divers who are new to diving, and sometimes they can push the limits, and it's up to me to get them out of a dangerous situation like that. So most of the time it's trying to avoid danger or stop it before it becomes too dangerous. Yeah. Nice question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Young's class. Okay, Miss Meineke's class, do you have a final question?
We have a final question. Go, Elijah.
How long can you stay underwater with the oxygen tank?
Oh, well, again, with the tank, maybe in the cold water 30 to 40 minutes, but in the warm water over an hour. But holding my breath, you'd be lucky if I could stay even 1 minute. Probably not. We definitely need that time.
Do you sometimes do snorkeling instead of diving?
Yeah, actually, you know, snorkeling is wonderful, especially in the warm water environment. So if you're ever lucky enough to go snorkeling near a tropical reef, the only time I went, well, the first time I went snorkeling on a coral reef was when I was 17 years old. But because it's so sunny and so much sunlight is hitting that upper reef, that's where most of the life is found. So if you're snorkeling, you'll see just as much as you'll see if you're diving.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Meineke's class. We have 1 minute left for one final question from Mr. Vasquez's class.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, let's go. Microphone up. Go, Kathy. Go. Kathy. Okay, here we go. Loud.
Hello. Louder.
Okay, microphone on's better. Go.
What would you be if you weren't a sea diver?
Oh, what would I be if I wasn't a scuba diver? That's probably the best question because it's something that I have to think about a lot because you've got to be fit, you've got to be healthy to be a scuba diver. And right now I'm fit, I'm healthy, and I'm still relatively young, but you've always got to think what you're going to keep doing in the future. So at the moment, as I said, I'm back at university. That's going to give me more options for the future. But something else that I would really like to train as and study to become is, in the UK, we call it a paramedic. I think sometimes you call it an emergency medical technician. So something along those lines is of a lot of interest to me too. But I would be really sad if I wasn't able to always be a diver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, I'm going to say a big, huge thank you to Erin for sharing your adventures with us today and for answering all our questions. And thank you to our wonderful classrooms who joined us. Thank you so much. I'll let you guys say a goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay. Thank you so much, Erin. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.